This anecdote dates back to my final year of high school. I used to be a rebellious adolescent, but only around my family. I wasn't a bad child, just a punk in front of my family. I grew up in a loving household, but I was too cool to spend time with them. They always expected me to entertain my younger brother Jake, who was 10 years old at the time of the narrative. I was 8 years older than him. With that age disparity, we might as well have been separate animals. Whenever we went on vacation, my family would normally stay on or near the beach. We lived only around 5 hours from the seaside, so it was a simple journey. This year, they chose to travel to Maine. Don't get me wrong, it was gorgeous, and as an adult, I'd love to return, but as an 18-year-old, I thought it was the worst trip we could have ever had. Before I continue, I'd like to admit how much of a piece of garbage I was at the time. Even now, I can't believe what a little punk I was. We arrived at the house, and it was beautiful. It looked like something from a Stephen King novel, which was appropriate given that we were in Maine. It was a large white home, with green shutters nestled deep in the trees. My father even made the joke. This is how most horror films begin. Isn't it? Probably not the finest thing to say in front of a 10-year-old, but my brother didn't mind. He was equally fascinated by the mansion as I was. The inside of the house resembled a maze. The back center of the house was a massive living room with a breathtaking view of the forest behind it. The rest of the home was filled with halls that connected in unexpected locations. It was like designing a house in The Sims rather than seeing it in real life. The craziest thing about this facility wasn't the hallways. The house was connected to a modest adjoining house. The owner of the land where we were staying lived in this house. His name was Hugh. He was, let's say, odd. He was tall and had a very old sweat-stained bucket hat. His teeth were bright yellow, but it wasn't his physical features that jumped out. It was his personality. He was goofy, noisy, and somewhat quirky. He greeted my family and was really friendly toward us. He kept mentioning how kind people from Maine were. My family was nice and nodded along with him as he spoke to them. He informed us that if we needed anything, he was just next door, but otherwise we wouldn't hear or see him for the entire week. We weren't delighted to have this individual living in the same house as us, but there was nothing we could do, so we decided to make the best of it. Well, my family decided to make the most of it. I was being the worst, telling my family I wanted to leave. I was looking for a reason to depart and return home. My dad informed us of our upcoming hike as we were eating breakfast the first morning there. I told them I did not want to go. After some back and forth, they agreed to let me stay at the house while the three of them went on the climb. The major reason I didn't want to go was that I had just started dating Danny right before vacation and wanted to speak with her. I knew if I went on the hike, I'd lose service. So I deserted my family and texted my high school girlfriend. I was telling Danny about the house and sending her photos of its unusual layout. When I told her about the adjacent house, she didn't believe me. I promised her I will send her a video to verify it. One of the hallways ended with a door. I sent her a video explaining that Hugh's residence is behind that door. She still wasn't convinced, so I sent her a video. I proceeded to open the door, expecting it to be locked, and it wasn't. The worst part about this was that Hugh's door was just next to my bedroom door. This guy had an unlocked door directly next to where I would sleep. I didn't enjoy that. I ended myself wandering through Hugh's house while on FaceTime with Danny. It was simply a regular small house. The room I was in featured a television and a sofa. Nothing extraordinary. When I heard a door close from someplace in the house, I panicked and hurried back to our side of the house. A few minutes later, he knocked on the door. He remained upbeat and playful, asking why I was filming movies of his residence. I attempted to fib and tell him I was simply lost, but he didn't believe me. He also didn't look angry. He informed me that he had cameras in his home and was notified to one of the doors opening when he checked it. He had me on camera, flashing my phone throughout the room. I simply told him the truth after that, and he departed. He made a strange remark about how nobody in Maine locks their doors. I chuckled awkwardly and said I had to leave. He departed, and you better believe I shut the door. Perhaps residents in Maine do not lock their doors. However, in my hometown, doors are locked and double-checked. Danny informed me that she did not trust this person and that I should defend myself just in case. I brought a heavy wooden chair around to the door and propped it against it as a makeshift lock. When my family returned, I told them about the strange contact with Hugh, but they were furious because I walked into his house. They were correct, but I yelled at them nevertheless. My parents had just been home for about 30 or 40 minutes when they instructed me to get ready because we were going out to dinner. I protested again, stating that I would not leave. My parents were still unhappy about the Hugh situation, so they didn't bother fighting with me. They said they'd bring meals home for me. The sun set shortly after they left. I peered out the windows, and there was absolutely no light. A few hours later, I was sitting on the couch texting Danny when I heard a big bang. I got up right away. It sounded like it came from the end of the hall, past Hugh's shut door. I began putting things together in my thoughts and came to the conclusion that the sound could have been caused by the large wooden chair being toppled down. My first assumption was that Hugh was trying to get in. I sneaked across to the corridor, hoping to catch this weirdo in the act. It was too dark to see at the end of the corridor. When I flipped the light switch, the chair collapsed, and a backpack lay on the ground next to it. A backpack that was not mine. I dashed to the screened-in front porch, shut the door leading to the inside of the home, and ensured that the screen door to the outside was locked. I know it isn't a fortress, but it would allow me enough time to make a move if necessary. I sat in the fetal position on the ground beneath a patio table. I wasn't sure what to do, and, of course, I left my phone in the living room while messaging Danny. I heard footsteps from inside the home. Not frantic motions, just regular walking. I'm not sure how long it took, but it was at least several minutes before I noticed my father's van's headlights approaching. I got up and hurried outside, telling them to stay in the car. My parents were perplexed because I was speaking illogically about what had happened. Hugh came over, and I almost fell on the ground. He leaned over to my father and said he needed to talk to him privately. I attempted to draw my father back, but he simply rejected me. Hugh's body language indicated that something was awry. He wasn't being happy or goofy anymore. He appeared as if he had witnessed a ghost. My father shook his hand, turned to me, and instructed me to get inside the van. He stated we needed to go somewhere quickly. My younger brother was puzzled, and I could tell my father was terrified. My father drove away from the house and into the grocery store parking lot approximately a mile down the road. Just minutes later, he noticed several police cars driving by the parking lot. We all started yelling at my father to tell us what was going on, and he was honest, and told us everything. Hugh also noticed the loud roar. He received an alert that his camera had been triggered. When the chair I was using as a lock was knocked down, it must have struck the door hard enough to record movement on Hugh's camera. He assumed I was attempting to enter his home again. He suspected I was planning a high school prank. He checked the cameras but saw nothing. He explained that he had a gut feeling that something was awry. So he decided to intrude our privacy by checking the camera he had installed in the hallway of the house we were staying in. It was too dark to see anything before I turned on the light. He still just saw the knocked-over chair in the backpack, which he assumed was mine. Just as he was going to turn off the camera, he noticed a tall, bald man emerge from the bedroom I was staying in. A man he recognized as neither my father nor me. The man grabbed the backpack and returned to the room. Hugh rushed outside to assist me and observed. That's correct. After I had locked the screen door and ducked down. He was astute enough to recognize that I would probably not have believed him. And he was correct. I would not have. Instead, Hugh hid in the front yard with a perfect view of the house, in case the burglar attempted anything. He didn't want to sneak in through the adjoining house and potentially notify the intruder, as he feared it would put me in risk. When my family returned, he told my father everything, which is why we went away. We'd only been in the parking lot for a few minutes when Hugh called to say that the cops had chased the man into the woods and hadn't captured him yet. He told us to stay there and that he would get all of our belongings and bring them to us. We remained in a hotel that night and traveled home the following morning. If I hadn't acted like a spoiled kid and stayed at home, everything could have turned out quite differently. It could have been far worse. A few months later, my father contacted Hugh and inquired as to whether the suspect had been apprehended. They never did. Even with Hugh's cameras positioned throughout the property, they had no idea how he got in or what his goals were. He could have simply been a homeless man asking for shelter. At least it was what I told myself at the time, so that I could sleep at night. Sometimes the scariest things that happen to us do not involve face-to-face interactions. Sometimes people are hiding in plain sight. Every year, my family takes this huge vacation together. We stay at my aunt and uncle's oceanfront home in West Palm Beach. Their kid, Will, is my age, and we've always been close friends. It's also not limited to my immediate family. My other aunt and uncle join us and bring their children as well. Their daughter, Teresa, is my best friend. We went through high school together, and because we were the same age, had the same last name, and resembled each other, everyone assumed we were twins. We would enjoy these family holidays because we could tell folks that we were twins. As we became older, Teresa will, and I would party like rock stars during these family holidays. We would spend the day at the beach with the family, but at night, Will would take us to bars and clubs because he was a local. He knew all the hot spots. On one particular family vacation a few years ago, the three of us experienced something strange, which still troubles and scares me to this day. Teresa and Will are less freaked out. They believe what we witnessed was a joke or just an unusual incident. I'm just not sure. The trip was a typical West Palm Beach family holiday. We were occasionally having a good time. Will would accidentally drink too much during these trips. Perhaps it wasn't accidental. The child enjoyed his drinks, but because of this, Teresa and I knew exactly when he reached his limit. That's generally when we call it a night and arrange for a ride home. I was always responsible for getting us home. I'd only drink until a certain point, and then spend the rest of the time ensuring sure Teresa, and especially, Will didn't end up in a ditch. On this particular night, Will began to get loud in one of the bars. He continued claiming that because he was a local, he could say whatever he wanted, but that was not the case. He was causing a lot of trouble inside the pub, and he was eventually booted out. I mean, he was literally thrown out of the bar by the bouncer. He was rambling a little, but everything was good. He did not strike his head or anything. I believe his self-esteem suffered the most. I told Teresa to watch him while I looked for an Uber or another way home. He continued calling me a buzzkill, so I realized it was time to leave. I booked us a ride that would arrive shortly. While we waited, I called my boyfriend and told him about our time together. He laughed and urged me to contact him when I got home. Just as I hung up the phone, Teresa raced over to me, freaked out. She said she wasn't paying attention to Will while she was on the phone, and he stood up and strolled away. The child was in no shape to go around. I tried contacting him, but his phone kept going to voicemail, which is typical for Will. After a few minutes of sprinting around the streets calling his name, Teresa called out to me that she'd seen him. Fortunately, it was Will. He was strolling in a diagonal course toward the swamp, forest, or something. I'm not sure what you'd call that in Florida. I'm not sure what distinguishes a forest from a swamp. It was a highly wooded area with plenty of mud and filth. In this scenario, I'll refer to it as a swamp because it seems more appropriate for Florida. Teresa grabbed him before we entered the marsh and began verbally abusing him. Will was giggling and behaving like a toddler. As soon as Teresa released go of Will, he rushed into the swamp. I'm not sure if it was adrenaline or wrath, but we ran into the woods after him without thinking. It only took us a short period to catch up. He was so twisted up that he couldn't move quickly. Using the cell phone illumination, we were able to see how filthy and disgusting this location was. Our feet were fully saturated in mud as we began to emerge from the heavy undergrowth, and everyone told us to be quiet. We both glared at him as if we were about to smash him in the face, but before we could say anything, he warned us to be quiet again. He ducked down and appeared afraid. This was a very different Will from a decade ago. It didn't take us long to figure out why Will was down. We heard shouting and screaming from somewhere in the marsh. It wasn't just ordinary screams. That's not how it sounded to me. It sounded like screams I had never heard before, and I haven't heard them since. The three of us remained still and motionless while the screams resonated all around us. We couldn't determine where the shouts were coming from, but it seemed like someone was in peril. The screaming ended almost as abruptly as they began. We did not move. We lingered in that filthy marsh for at least another 15 minutes. Then we dashed out of the marsh as quickly as possible, returning to one of the streets lined with bars. We received a ride home and quickly sobered up. We tried to figure out what we had heard so that we could provide a sensible explanation. Anything we came up with was not good. Teresa came up with the notion of visiting the swamp in the morning. During the day, she suggested we may safely explore the area and see if there was anything to be concerned about. I know I'd never be able to get back to where we were the night before, but Teresa is excellent like that. She's like a professional hiker, and she proved it by leading us to the exact area where we were hidden the night before. All three of our indentations from our hiding place remained in the earth. We all had a brief discussion on where we thought the cries were coming from, despite the fact that it was difficult to place due to the way the scream echoed. We all unexpectedly agreed on the same broad direction. Teresa led the way through the dense undergrowth. This wasn't a typical path. We were simply trekking through the shrubs and mud puddles. A few minutes later, Teresa let out a gasp. A denim jacket, sleeve hung from one of the tree branches. Just below the torn sleeve, there were a number of different tracks in the dirt, almost as if there had been a battle. I was ready to go back, but Teresa pushed a little further. There was a small gap at the sleeve bordered by trees. The remaining denim jacket lay on the ground. More tracks in the dirt surrounded the jacket, appearing to be bunched up in one location. Again, making me feel as if a struggle occurred here. One set of footprints led away from the jacket and into thicker vegetation, making it impossible to track the footsteps. I was finished with all of this. I told Teresa and Will that I didn't feel safe longer and wanted to return to the house. They weren't as alarmed as I was, but they were concerned about everything. We returned to the house, and I'm not sure why I let them talk me into it, but we decided to just let it go. I was certain at the time that we had witnessed some sort of potential crime, but Will and Teresa didn't agree. They claimed it was plausible, but it was most likely a prank or perhaps a coincidence that we discovered the code and happened to hear screams the night before. Will also persuaded us that if we contacted law enforcement, we would be the only ones connected to the crime, assuming there was one. That worried us, even though we had nothing to conceal. He argued that the officers might not believe 3 young adults were standing in the middle of a random, swampy place and witnessed a potential crime. Would they truly think that our intoxicated cousin just went into the swamp? If I could do it over, I would have phoned the cops as soon as I heard the screaming. At the time, I simply believed Will made valid arguments, and I decided it was best to go on and forget about it. That shriek haunts me even after several years. I've always wondered if I observed a crime or just a serious home dispute. I'm glad to get this story off my chest. It's been therapeutic to share this. I hope you never have to hear those kinds of screams in your life, because you will never forget them. Last summer, my girlfriend and I experienced what I'm about to describe. It was our first time traveling together as a couple, and we were quite excited. She came with me on a family vacation once, but it's not the same as being alone with, so this felt like a meaningful and significant next step. The vacation was unforgettable, but not for the reasons you might expect. Not that anyone will ever find out who we are, but in the sake of privacy, I'll refer to my girlfriend as Vanessa in this account. One essential element I should mention right away is that Vanessa frequently reminds me that I am far too pleasant and giving when meeting new people. She thinks there is a distinction between simply being nice as a normal person and being my version of nice, which appears to be treating every new person I meet as if they are my best friends. Those were her words, not mine. I'm an overly polite guy, and it's gotten me in problems numerous times in my life. But only once did it almost cost me a fortune. The story begins on the drive down to Ocean City, Maryland. It's a fun little tourist destination. It's essentially a vast coastal town with an abundance of condos, hotels, and restaurants. For the most part, everything is well out on the water. I used to vacation there with my family when I was younger, but this was my first visit as an adult. When we were about 20 minutes from the condo where we would be staying, I decided to stop at a gas station to fill up the tank and get some drinks. A guy who later introduced himself as Henry ran into me. He turned back and started apologizing profusely. I raised my hands and assured him that everything was all right, and that it was probably my fault anyway. Henry was a nice-looking guy. He was wearing a pink and black button-up shirt that was mostly unbuttoned. He had kind eyes and maintained direct eye contact with me while we were talking. He was presumably in his late 20s. If I had to guess, I wouldn't know for sure. We talked for a minute or two while we waited in line, and I informed him that we were going to Ocean City. He lighted up and told me he and his girlfriend were also going to Ocean City. I got thrilled and told him the name of the condo where we were staying, and he smiled and said he thinks he knows where it is, and he's quite confident it's close to us. I was looking forward to this true interaction. I get excited when I meet new individuals and make friends. One of my faults is my inability to see people's defects. I consider it a strength, but Vanessa considers it a weakness, despite the fact that she admires me for it. Henry requested me to trade numbers, and I did so without hesitation. I told him I'd call him anytime during the week, and we might meet up at the beach or for dinner one night. We exchanged a bro embrace and went our separate ways. Vanessa knew as soon as I came back in the car that I'd made a new acquaintance based on how I was acting. I told her the story, and she simply rolled her eyes. We arrived at the property in the afternoon and spent the evening relaxing in our room. Our accommodation was on the 5th level, overlooking the ocean. We sat on the balcony, admiring the vista till we went to bed. The next day, we went to the beach early. We are both early risers, so getting up early is not an issue. We put up our seats on the beach shortly after 7 a.m. and drank our coffee. A few hours later, I heard someone call out my name from behind me. I turned back to see Henry waving at me, followed by a woman. She wasn't like Henry. He was mirroring many of my mannerisms and energy, and she appeared unhappy. She was pale. The majority of her face was covered by these massive sunglasses, and the rest was shaded by a massive sun hat. She wore leggings and a button-up long-sleeved shirt. She was also carrying a large tote bag that appeared empty. This woman disliked the sun. She didn't speak much. Henry introduced her as Sarah, his woman friend, and she simply waved and smiled unenthusiastically. She was the complete opposite of the Henry the first met the day before. After an awkward introduction, Henry asked if they could join us, and of course we said yes. The more the merrier was always my motto. They did not have chairs or beach gear. Henry just plopped down in the sand while his female companion stood there. I stood up and offered her my chair. She hesitated for a second before taking it. While we were sitting there, Henry informed us that they were staying in the building right next to ours. My mind was blown. I couldn't believe the chances of that happening. Vanessa saw that as a major red flag, but I didn't. We stayed for another hour or so, and then returned to the room before leaving. Henry kept asking if we could all go out for a drink tonight, but I could tell Vanessa wasn't interested, so I just told him I'd call him if we decided to go. When we returned to the room, Vanessa began to tell me about all of her concerns. She said Henry appeared fake and gave her major creep vibes. She also claimed that Sarah was one of the rudest people she'd ever encountered. She complained about the sun the whole time. She also made an excellent point, stating that she does not know anyone who comes to a beach town despises the beach, and then goes down to the beach without bringing a chair, towel, umbrella, or anything else. I told her she made excellent points, and that I wouldn't call Henry for the rest of the trip. I didn't want to ruin Vanessa's vacation. That night, I sat on the balcony, smoking a cigar, despite the fact that it was not permitted. It was late, but I'm not sure what time. I was looking down at the beach, and I swear I saw Sarah walking alone. She had the big tote bag, the big hat, and the same outfit as before. I was simply too far away to be sure. I returned inside and prepared to call it a night. Vanessa was already in bed. I went to make sure the door was locked, and I thought I heard someone talking from outside. This alone would not be a problem because there are multiple condominiums on the floor, but the conversation seemed like it was coming from right outside my door. I tried to listen, but it all sounded like incoherent mumbling. I approached the door to ensure it was locked, but before I could grab the doorknob, I noticed it shook as if someone was attempting to open it from the opposite side. Instead of fleeing or freaking out, I politely announced that they had the wrong room. After I said that, I heard footsteps running away. I had assumed that someone had attempted to enter the wrong room by mistake. After all, accidents occur. I stayed awake a little later to be sure I didn't have another unexpected visitor. Nobody else came to the door, so I went to sleep. The following day, the same thing occurred. Henry and Sarah seemingly appeared out of nowhere and joined us on the beach. They were dressed in the same clothing again. That would be normal on the beach if you were wearing a bathing suit or something, but Henry and Sarah were not. He was still wearing the same outfit I saw him in at the gas station, and she was dressed the same as the day before. We didn't spend much time at the beach today. I could tell Vanessa was all done with these two. I politely told Henry that her and I were going to go back to the room for a while and then have a romantic dinner out. I told him that I'd text him if we were down to grab a drink later. He seemed overly excited for some reason and let us go. While we were getting ready to go out, I looked out the balcony and I saw Sarah standing on the ground where the beach meets the patio of the condo building. She wasn't facing the building. She was facing the ocean. It was weird that she was in front of our building and not where they were supposedly staying. But the weirdest thing was that Henry was nowhere to be found. She was by herself. I watched her for a little while, which made me feel like a creep. A few minutes went by when Henry appeared from what looked like the bottom of our building. I watched him go over to Sarah. He started swinging his fists around and then rushed off in the opposite direction from where they were staying. Sarah waited a few seconds and then followed him. That whole interaction felt odd, but who am I to judge? Once Vanessa was ready, we left the condo and headed out to lunch. While we were out, my phone started ringing. It was Henry. I didn't answer it. After dinner, we started walking back to the condo. Since we were only a few blocks away, Henry called again. Vanessa encouraged me to just text him back and tell him we're going to bed, so he stops calling. So I texted him and told that we were strolling back from supper and that we were going to bed early. Immediately, my phone started ringing. It was Henry. I didn't answer. He finally sent a message that said, "Hello, friend. Let's meet for a drink before you come back. It's too early to go to bed." Vanessa rolled her eyes, and even I was becoming annoyed now. I responded with another text that stated, "Thanks for the offer, but we're going to bed. We're already about to be at the condo." Then I got the weirdest text of all, a one that may have had some other connotations. All it stated was, "Don't go to your room yet." We both stopped and contemplated the text while standing in the parking lot of the condo. Henry seemed weird, but was he capable of something malicious? Vanessa thought so. We came to the room a few minutes later and found that the door was slightly open. I know for a fact that I did not leave the door open. Vanessa started to panic, and she waited in the hall. I slowly entered the room and felt relieved. Everything looked how we left it, at least at first. Then I started noticing things that weren't how we left them. The balcony door was open, but nobody was out there in the bedroom. Both of our baggage were fully looted, and the only thing missing was a pair of Jordans. I brought Vanessa's beach suit and a picture of us that we had printed off and set on the dresser in the bedroom. We called the police and informed them that we suspected it might be Henry and Sarah who broke into our room, but they were nearly for sure phony names. The condo next door had no record of a Henry being there, and the only Sarah in the building was not that Sarah. When they tried to track the phone, it was no longer in service. The local police told us that it's not something that happens a lot in that town, but occasionally some people may try to rob tourists. We were just some of the unlucky folks who were chosen, I think. The only thing I gained from this experience is that I really need to be more careful about who I trust. And if anyone out there visits Ocean City, Maryland, just be careful, because somewhere out there, Henry and Sarah are still lurking.